I want you to imagine that it's Friday night. You always eat out on a Friday night, usually at the Italian place down the road. But recently you've been a little bit bored. You want to try something new. And so you've done some research and you've found this fabulous little Asian place just across the road from the Italian. You first saw it when you walked past and you saw these magnificent mouth-watering photographs of all the meals on the window. You picked up a flyer that had a wonderful description of the ambience and the atmosphere in that restaurant. You saw an ad in the newspaper and you even checked out the website, and that was pretty cool. So here you are, Friday night, ready to sit down to what promises to be a wonderful pad thai and a spicy prawn laksa. And it's appalling. It's absolutely dreadful. It's not what you expected at all. And it seems to you that all of this fancy advertising and these wonderful photographs are merely covering up what has proved to be very ordinary food. Now, I want you to imagine that you're the owner of that restaurant. And I want you to imagine that the diners in that restaurant are your employees. Because I'd like to suggest to you that choosing an employer to work for is a little bit like choosing a restaurant to eat at. So how do you make sure that your company is not that restaurant that has mouth-watering images on the window but very dissatisfied diners? Well, the obvious answer to that is make sure that these photographs are actually what people are going to be eating. And in HR speak, I guess what that means is make sure that the employer brand is built on an EVP that is real and is lived in your organisation. Easier said than done, I know, I've experienced it, and that's what I want to share our story with you, the lessons we learned and what we're doing now. But before I do that, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of an overview of who Siemens is for those of you that don't know. So we're a company that employs just over 360,000 people worldwide in around about 190 countries. And you can see here, yes, most of our revenue comes from out of Europe, obviously. Our business is incredibly diverse, from healthcare to energy to infrastructure to cities. And we've been around for about 160, nearly 170 years. And during that time, really innovation has been our lifeblood. That's what we're about. You can see up here that we have almost 30,000 of our employees are in R&D, and we spend over €4 billion a year on research and development. So we have a lot of people, a lot of diversity. And if I paint a picture for you for what that means for recruitment, in 2012 we employed about 52,000 people worldwide in about 80 different countries and across about 25 different job families. So we're pretty diverse. We need a lot of people and we need a lot of different people. But back to the story. In 2009, Siemens decided that we needed a global employer brand. We had very aggressive and very ambitious growth targets, and thankfully a board member responsible for HR who recognised that the only way we were going to meet those ambitious goals was to have the right people on board. We had a very prominent company brand globally, but not really an employer brand, and certainly not a global employer brand. And we recognised that if we were going to be successful in developing a global employer brand, we needed to approach it globally. We couldn't have a whole lot of wildly creative HR marketing people in Germany coming up with a global employer brand. That was just not going to work. We also recognised that we needed to ensure that our employer brand was based on reality, who we really are as an organisation. So, in 2009, we brought together around about 50 or 60 people from all around the Siemens world, brought them into Germany for a 2-day workshop to figure out who are we as an organisation. We didn't want to create something by people who didn't know who we were. We wanted this to come from the employees. We ensured we addressed diversity, so we looked at people of different genders, different ages, different geographic locations, different seniority, to ensure we had a good cross-section. We also brought in some external experts in employer branding and creative agencies to ensure that we had people who knew what they were doing with respect to employer branding and EVP. We also had that board member that I mentioned. He opened the workshop and sponsored it, so sent a very, very strong message to the entire organisation that EVP and employer brand were of the utmost importance at the very high levels of our organisation. The upshot of all this, so sticky notes and whiteboards and breakout groups and all of the things that you do when you're at a workshop, was an EVP that we uncovered that consisted of 5 key attributes. I'm not going to go into these in detail because that's not the purpose of the story, but you can see here we had 5 different attributes: curiosity and openness, heritage, sustainability and future. This information we gave to the creative agencies, and we also gave them the information about our company brand, which at the time, and still is, answers. We provide answers for the world's toughest problems and questions. And the agency put all this information together and came up with an employer branding concept, which was dare to ask. There can be no answers without people who ask questions. We took this concept and we created an employer branding campaign out of it, and found real Siemens employees who were able to ask questions and find answers within their jobs. We created videos and stories and a website and social media presence and booth designs, the whole thing. We were also very cognizant of the fact, and I think Jenny was mentioning it before, we're a global organisation, 190 countries. How do we make sure that we can send a consistent message about who we are as a company globally, but also give those different countries and those different businesses enough wiggle room or flexibility to express their own individuality and meet their own needs? And so to do that, we created a toolbox, I suppose, of templates and images that people could utilise to customise. And a couple of examples here. These are just image ads. You can see we have a German one and a French one. Not just a language difference, but the feeling behind the language is also important. So we launched end of 2009. We won a couple of awards, which was great. Branding, marketing, industry awards. Our employer rankings increased in some of our key markets and continue to do so. We were awarded Universum's #1 employer in Europe for engineering students again this year. So employer rankings is going well. Fast forward 2 to 3 years and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, well, are we successful? How do I know if we're successful? Did we actually set any objectives, targets when we created this campaign? Or did we just have this vague notion that we want to attract a lot of people to our organisation, which in itself is probably okay? And while I was thinking and pondering all of this, we started to get some feedback from inside our organisation that some people didn't get this. Some people didn't get this dare to ask employer branding. Worse, though, was some of the feedback that I was getting that some people in our organisation was telling me that the story that we were telling or the picture we were painting outside the organisation about Siemens was not what they were experiencing inside. So in some quarters of my organisation, people thought my employer brand was marketing spin and nothing else. Now, the original purpose of our employer branding back in 2009 was talent acquisition, to recruit people. And it's achieved that. That's fabulous. But listening to this feedback, I was thinking, well, the original real thing was to ensure we had the right people on board to achieve our objectives. So we don't just want to attract them, we want to keep them. We want to retain them, and we need to engage them as well. And quite frankly, making promises that you're not able to keep is no way to go about doing that. So, as you can imagine, we decided we had to do something about this. And we, taking into consideration this feedback we got, we proactively went out and sought feedback about our employer branding externally from our target market. We also updated our research into what the market is looking for. And we started to revitalise and review our employer brand. At the same time we were taking all of this feedback in, we sat down in a very German process-oriented way, did lessons learned, what worked well and what could we do better next time. And I'd like to just share with you some of those, what worked well and what didn't work well. So what did work well first time around? We did a really, really good job of involving all our relevant stakeholders as we built up our EVP and our employer brand. You heard me mention all of the stakeholders that we got involved, and all of them really felt ownership of this employer brand. So that's something that we are doing again and we will continue to do. I mentioned addressing the diversity of our business, and I don't mean diversity as in gender diversity, etc. I mean the diversity of our business to ensure that all of the businesses can use our employer branding. I think we did a great job of alignment with our company brand. Those of you that were in the presentation this morning by L'Oreal would have laughed or smiled as I did when she said that she wanted her employer brand to be as far away as possible from her company brand. I share that view. I think that a company brand and the employer brand are different. I think they need to be aligned, absolutely, but they are different. And we did this really well. The answers and the dare to ask worked well, and we need to maintain that. And from a rolling out and an implementation of our employer branding, we did a great job internally collaborating. We have talent acquisition colleagues all around the Siemens world. We formed virtual teams to ensure that as we rolled out and implemented globally, we were all aligned. And again, we will continue to do that. But as a couple of other people have said in their presentations today, it wasn't all roses. And there were certainly some things that in the retrospectoscope, we could have done quite a bit better. And this is where the EVP thing really comes in for me. We need to do this inside out properly. Last time we did an absolutely amazing job, and I really do believe that it was world class at the time, of uncovering our EVP and understanding how important it is that the employer brand is built on an EVP. But that's kind of where it stopped for us. We used the EVP to develop the employer brand, we launched it externally, and we kind of forgot to keep linking it back to our EVP and to keep talking about it inside our organisation. This time around, we've got to make sure that it's inside out the whole way through. I mentioned our collaboration on rolling out our program was great, and it was. But again, in an ongoing fashion, the collaboration, once we rolled out this employer brand, really, we could do better. And when we will ensure that we have an inside-out approach happening, we need collaboration of all the relevant functions in our organisation that can contribute to our EVP. Because if the employer brand is based on the EVP needs to be supported by all functions in the organisation that contribute to organisational culture. And it's different in every organisation. For us, it's our employee engagement colleagues, it's communications, it's leadership. In your organisation, it might be a different function, but it's really important that they work together. We were a silo. We were employer branding and talent acquisition, and we were a silo. And if we're going to be successful in the future, we need to change that. Regularly review. We didn't review this until we got a shock. And if it was 3 to 4 years later, EVP, employer brand, it's like everything in life, it evolves. And so I believe that we need to build in, as we're going through this new process, a regular review and revision process for both the EVP and the employer brand that is born out of that. Engaging in dialogue is key for all of the above, both internal and external. Social media will play a key role, as we've heard. and not just for our external people. All our employees are on social media as well, and we need to be aware of that when we're engaging in dialogue. And finally, setting the goals and measuring success. This is a real challenge for a lot of people. I've spoken to a few people today already about how do you measure the success of employer branding. I think it's different for everyone. Everyone has their own reasons for doing employer branding. If your reason is that you want to attract more CVs, then measure that. If the reason you're doing employer branding is to increase your engagement levels, measure that. But be clear about what you want to measure. Because when someone asks you, have you been successful in your employer branding, you can't answer them unless you know what success looks like. And just to share with you our approach, and again, too much information, don't try and read it all, but we believe at Siemens that we need to take a dashboard approach. There are many aspects of HR that we think that employer branding impacts and many things that we want to achieve. And so we're looking at local and corporate metrics and also social media and more traditional metrics as well. If anyone would like to discuss this with me in more detail, I'm very happy to talk to you about it. So they're the lessons that we've learned, and we're moving forward with our revamping and revising, and we hope to be able to launch in the next couple of months. But what's the future, not just for employer branding for Siemens here, but the future for employer branding in EVP? Let's go back to the restaurant analogy. So imagine again that you are the owner of that restaurant. You've got a problem. You've got people coming in, they're excited, they're interested in your restaurant, and they leave disillusioned and unhappy and quite possibly very hungry. And most likely telling all their friends about it. And at the very least, if they get asked their opinion, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good at all. So what are you going to do? Where do you invest? Do you invest your money in better photographs, more advertisements in that newspaper, a cooler website? Or do you invest in your staff, training your chefs, engaging your wait staff, creating that feeling that Jenny talked about, in hospitality, that doing a fabulous job and serving others is rewarding? Do you invest in your menu, developing your menu, sourcing the best ingredients? By doing that, you'll create an amazing dining experience that will delight your customers, and they'll go out and they'll tell all their friends about it. Word of mouth. And in the same way that restaurants are relying more and more on word of mouth, recommendations, social media, I certainly feel at Siemens that companies like us are starting to lose a little bit of control of our employer brand. We see it already in the travel industry, TripAdvisor. Who used TripAdvisor to get here or find a restaurant? Yeah, I did too. And we're also starting to see it in recruitment with Glassdoor and Kununu, and I know there are others around the world as well. And I do feel like all these really clever campaigns and marketing and advertising that the employer branding professionals put so much effort into, maybe not irrelevant, but a lot less relevant than it used to be. 10 or 15 years ago, if we'd had a row with the boss or we didn't like the company, we'd go down to the pub, have a few beers and tell a couple of mates. Now, we go online and we tell millions. So I think, and certainly at Siemens, we are rethinking where we invest our resources and our money when it comes to employer branding. If, as I'm suggesting, our employees become the custodians of our employer brand, we should be investing in them. We should be developing them. We should be engaging them. We should be developing programs that preserve or even evolve our company culture and, therefore, support our EVP. In a restaurant, it's all about the food and the service. But in your company, it's all about the EVP. And I can tell you it's never going away. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, let me go back.
Yeah. What would you say is the key people performance index you would use?
That's a really good. Some of the things that we've got in here, we're still figuring out how we're going to measure them. But from my perspective, it's around engagement. It's around employee engagement. And it's also around when we look at overall talent management and identifying talent in the organisation, are we seeing the people that we're recruiting performing at a high level? Are we recruiting the right people? Doesn't answer your question?
Yeah. It's your way of doing it.
Yeah, and I'd be very interested to hear how other people measure this, because it really is a big challenge. Like IHG, surprisingly, we're not great with data either, and trying to measure these things is difficult. Mm-hmm.
You tend to see like lag measures in most of these, and I'm trying myself to find the lead measures. I think engagement is one of them. I think Net Promoter Score is another one that's great for attracting and retaining. But it's just the way. Yeah. So what do you do about it? And the things, but I understand it's under development.
Yeah. Sure.
Question back there.
Hi Teresa, I'm Stan. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Just wondering, from your role, your perspective, I've been listening to the news the last couple of weeks, and I understood Siemens is going to do some significant layoffs around the world. In your role with the campaign coming up, how do you do that? What's the balancing act?
Yeah. The first thing I'd say about the layoffs, there's a lot of controversy around that, and what's been reported in the media I don't think is completely accurate. But having said that, whether it's real or not, it's a perception out there in the market that is a struggle for us. My view on this is, regardless of what you're doing with laying people off, if that's what you have to do, you still need the best people in your organisation. In fact, I'd go so far as to say, if you're getting rid of people for whatever reason, you need even better people inside, because they've got to do a better job with less. And for me, this is where the employer branding and the EVP comes into its own internally. This is one of the challenges that I think that we really need to be better at. We need to attract the absolute best people, and we need to keep them in these times. And so it's very important that an employer brand or an EVP message resonates with people. Our previous one, for reasons I didn't have a lot of time to go into, didn't do that well for all of our target audience. So that's probably the best way that I can answer that. Yeah.
Sorry,
Hey.
from Kay. Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Really interested with your analogy about the importance of not misrepresenting reality.
Yes.
Further restaurants. But also recognising that companies generally have both current standards and qualities and also aspirational standards and qualities. Upon which would you suggest an EVP should be based? Upon the current, which actually is the truth, or upon the aspirational, which is where the organisation wants to go?
Yeah. I think it needs to be a little bit of both. Myself, I've gone back to this slide because curiosity and openness is something that we really value in our organisation, but we're not that great at it everywhere. And that was the reason we put it at the core of our EVP. The rest of it's a no-brainer. Anyone who knows Siemens will know that, the heritage, 170 years, hello. I mean, we've been here for a long time. The sustainability in the future is there. So that's real and that's solid. We chose to focus on curiosity and openness because that's where we wanted to move to. So we wanted to use the EVP not only to attract people, and obviously attract the right people, but to help drive cultural change. So, I think what that balance is probably depends a lot on where you want to go as an organisation. If you're happy with where you are and you just need to, maintain the status quo, maybe you don't want to be too risky. But, there is an opportunity to use this as potentially a driver for change. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Claire Rogerson.
Hey. Hi, Claire.
It was a really good presentation. Thank you very much. I'm really interested to find out what you think about if your employees are the custodians of your brand,
Yeah.
your brand. How, in an organisation as vast as Siemens, how do you maintain consistency of that EVP across all of those different touch points?
Yeah. Oh, I wish I knew. I'll answer that in two ways, if that's okay. There's one school of thought that maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should have different EVPs for different parts of your organisation, whether that be different countries or different job families or different businesses. What we've tried to do is, because our EVP is I wouldn't say it's generic, but there's a lot of room to move in there. We encourage people, as well as having a toolbox of images and templates for employer branding, to choose what works best for them and to focus in and drill in on that. So that's one approach to it. Don't try and make all things to all people. The second thing would be, if you, in an organisation as large as Siemens, if you want to have something that is consistent, it has to be pretty high level, really has to be pretty high level. And for us, the topic around heritage and future is something that is fairly, generic's not a good word, but irrelevant across the world. But it's a real challenge, and one that we haven't cracked. And if anyone has got some wisdom to share, I'd be very happy to receive it.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Hello,
Hey.
I'm Teresa Collis from Philips. I had a question. You mentioned, very rightfully so, that a regular review is very important.
Yes.
But when you think about what that needs that review, are you then referring to what you have over there, or would it be the campaign that you were referring to? Because I can imagine that something like that is not something we would change every year.
Yeah.
However, a campaign needs, adaptation.
Yeah.
Looking at the audiences.
Yep. I think every company is going to have a different situation. I think that the campaign, or the creative expression, if you like, of your EVP is something that should probably be reviewed maybe every 12 months, to be honest. I mean, things move so quickly. We talk about social media. So I think that that's regular. Regarding an EVP like this, probably every 3 to 5 years, have a look at it, unless there's some big cultural change going on, and then you should probably have a massive, big review. But I think that if you're reviewing something like this every 3 years or so, you're unlikely to have to, change the world and get rid of everything. You might have to tweak it a bit here or tweak it a bit there, and that's preferable to, completely reinventing the wheel.